Welcome to Two Hypnotherapists Talking with me, Denise Billen-Mejia, in Delaware, USA.
And me, Martin Furber, in Preston, UK.
This weekly podcast is for anyone and everyone who'd like to know more about the fascinating subject of hypnosis and the benefits it offers.
I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and psychotherapist.
I'm a retired medical doctor turned consulting hypnotist.
We are Two Hypnotherapists Talking.
So let's get on with the episode.
Yeah, let's get on with the show. What are we talking about this week? What are we talking about this week, Denise?
I think we need to talk about old habits and why they won't die.
Oh, right, okay. Old habits. Well, we could get all technical and talk all neuroscience if you want. Or,
we could do that. We could do that.
Yeah. But I think it might be interesting for our viewers and listeners actually to talk about some of the neuroscience behind it, because so many times you hear about hypnotherapy, don't you? It's pseudoscience, it's this, that, and the other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it might be.
Yeah, I hear that from a lot of people, but it isn't.
Yeah, I know. Well, this is the thing. And I'm going to use the D word. You know, a doctor wouldn't advocate for something that's pseudoscience, would they?
I would hope not. Although, unfortunately, COVID did show us that a few are willing to. The vast majority, more than 9 out of 10 doctors, believe in evidence before they'll prescribe something.
Yeah.
Yes, but we also will accept a preponderance of anecdotal evidence. There's a lot of stuff we can't explain why it works, but it does. And it appears not to be causing harm. And hypnosis has been around for thousands of years and studied properly for the last couple of hundred. So, I mean, the way that we think of studies. So I feel perfectly comfortable and not only using it, but also recommending it to my friends.
Yeah. No, I was looking at something that interested me, and it stems from something when I was very first studying hypnosis, and it was stuff by John Ratey about how the mind works, and he called it Brain Derived Neurotropic Factor.
That's a nice word.
Yeah, I know. So basically, the chemicals we produce within ourselves when we take ourselves for some brisk exercise. He says in his book Spark, it's as good as having a hit of Ritalin and a hit of something or other else as well. It makes you feel good and lifted and what have you. Okay, that's his sort of, well, it's anecdotal, it's evidence based. He did a lot of stuff in America, John Ratey, with his book. I'm remembering this off the top of my head now. It's 4 years since I read the book. In the Chicago area, he devised a phys ed thing in schools where the pupils were doing phys ed stuff in the morning before lessons, and the grades shot up.
Good.
Yeah.
We also know children need playtime.
Yeah. Well, this was before
and adults
we
need
down to all the academia.
And we had also spoken in a previous episode about the importance of taking breaks.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
All of the above. Actually, part of the reason I wanted to talk about this is that client of mine recently who was terribly gung-ho, but she was terribly gung-ho in wanting to overcome. She's a fear of driving. And so we're working on her practicing driving in her mind. She's mechanically competent. She's been driving for decades, but she's suddenly become fearful. And
was that as a result of an accident or something, or
there was an incident several years ago, and we all catastrophize. And so I forgot to, although I'd alluded to allowing old pathways to degrade, but I had not stressed to her that unless she really had to drive, she should probably just skip it. So unfortunately, for the first week after her first session, she very proudly said, I managed to get myself in the car. And no, that's not what I want you to do. But thank you for trying.
Well, you must have already eliminated some of her fear then.
Oh, yes. No, she has not stopped driving.
Okay.
And she doesn't have, but she has had some panic attacks that's what she's really worried about. It's getting to the point where she doesn't even want to be in a car with somebody else driving. So I just suggested that without going under house arrest, she should avoid getting in a car if she can. It's lovely to go spend some time in your garden, order in.
The right time of the year.
You can't really survive very long in America without some form of wheel transportation because unless you're living in one of the really big cities.
I was going to say,
There's
that's
no
because
around.
distances don't seem to be any objects over there.
No, because we've got wheels and gas. Yeah.
Yeah, I know when I
Yeah.
stayed in LA, a couple of people said to me, "Oh, do you want to come for a drink at such and such a bar?" It's like, where's that down the road? It was 35 miles away.
Oh, that's nothing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was nothing, you know. That's a
Yeah.
major expedition over here.
And I remember just going from Salisbury to Southampton. You had to plan ahead.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's
Sorry,
neither
we
here nor there.
digress, as
With
usual.
her, with her, she's now just practicing in her head. She
Mm.
did have a couple of appointments that she didn't want to miss, so I did check in with her soon, because I check in with all of my clients every few days, in order to gauge whether we need to have a session at the week mark or the 2-week mark, if they
Yeah.
need a new audio.
Yeah, case by
Just to
case
see how,
basis.
yeah,
Yeah.
see how they're doing. But that did make me think, oh yeah, of course. If you keep doing something, I mean, I know this. I should have been more explicit. But and then you happen to have gone to the course, which reminded you of all the science behind
Well, yeah,
it.
it's what's interesting in though is, like you say, in habit forming. So you've got a lady who has become increasingly nervous every time she's got in a car. So whatever that fear is has been reinforced each time. You know, a bad habit loop.
Right.
Negative
So now
thinking
she's at
loop.
the point where she's worried about being worried.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
No, I was on a course at the weekend to do with neuroscience, and of course, I can remember some of the big words, but it's the actual. No, for me, it provides the evidence for what we do and takes away the thing of people saying, "Oh, it's pseudoscience, so it's this, that, and the other." And I think a big
All the
help.
woo-woo's
Oh,
gone.
the woo-woo, yeah, no woo-woo. For me, I like evidence-based stuff. And for me, when you start looking at how they monitor things on EEG equipment, and then you can see the difference between when somebody's in trance, or when they are just lying there and thinking about something. You can see the difference on the EEGs. And again, they've got little things for it. It's like your what is it now? Your awake alpha, your busy beta.
That's helpful. You just have to remember the Greek for me.
Yeah, it's all Greek to me too. And then you've got, what is it now? The thinking theta. That's the one, you see, the theta waves.
Oh, right.
When we're in trance.
Well, transy theta.
Transy theta, yeah. We got transy theta instead of thinking theta. Yeah, so it was. I was just fascinated by it. I have been ever since I first saw one. A client in trance on an EEG machine. You can actually see the difference between that and when somebody is asleep and dreaming, because we quite often say in hypnotherapy, I don't know if you do, but I do, that part of what we do in relaxing the client when we're trying to remove emotions from memories replicates REM sleep. Well, it only replicates certain parts of REM sleep because our brain is, operating on different brain waves.
It's also trying to clear stuff out, I think, when it's doing that. I just tell people it's like having a really good daydream.
Well, yeah, that's the thing as well. Theta hypnosis, it is similar to daydreaming. And of course, if you've ever had a really good daydream, you can be completely oblivious to what's happening around you.
Right.
If I can remember it particularly when I was at school, actually daydreaming in the classroom, and you've been unaware for 5 minutes of what's happening, and the teacher suddenly chucks a board duster at you or something. It's like, what? And your eyes.
I wasn't asleep.
Yeah, well, you weren't asleep, not as in the traditional sense of eyes closed asleep, but you were certainly miles away. And I suppose to me, that's my nearest fitting of how I am if I go under hypnosis. You're sort of aware of your surroundings, but
the gizmo that does the gizmo for the EEGs, which I think of them as the huge things that are attached to walls and people are wires coming out everywhere. This a very simplified version now, and obviously what you're using is only so many leads. You don't need all of them.
Yeah, you can get ones with as few as 5 leads that will show the basic areas. The one that I've seen and that seems to be being used now has got 14 on. Which to me seems more adequate for the purposes.
I was wondering how think of cardiology, Holter monitors where you're hooked up and you've got a little recorder that you can be attached to you so you can get about. Do they have a version that you can get about? Because I wonder what information we might gain from awake alert hypnosis. That would be really nice to see some brainwave activity while people are doing that.
Yeah. There is a sort of mobile version for recording things on it and then downloading it afterwards, onto a SIM card. There are different versions of it. They've got a really, really simplified version, which is basically like earpods with just two sensors for left and right side of the brain, which isn't going to give you an awful lot of information, I don't think.
No, but it might be handy to. I mean, some of this is to gain actual information, but the really big studies need to be done on the big machines at the big hospitals.
Yeah.
This is partly to show your clients.
Yeah, these are just for research use, not for medical use.
Yeah.
Yeah, they state that as well. The manufacturers state that, it's for research.
Well, yes, but what I mean is I think we'd have to see how robust the machines are. I don't mean jumping up and down on them. Reliable the data is.
No, but it's, as I say, it was fascinating stuff. And what really, really interested me was the bits about neuroplasticity, which, of course, that explains hypnotherapy, doesn't it, in a lot of ways, in terms of how we make new habits and how we open those neural pathways. Because, again, when we're speaking anecdotally about neural pathways, it could sound woo-woo. It's not, is it? Neural pathways are not woo-woo. They're absolute science.
They've been there all along. We just don't name for them.
Well, it wasn't that many years ago. We thought we couldn't make new brain cells as adults.
Or liver.
Yeah, liver can repair itself, can't it? Even after horrendous damage.
So, what's the takeaway, Martin?
What's the takeaway? Well, I was really pleased that it confirmed to me a lot of what we do, say from a scientific point of view, rather than a pseudoscience point of view. Because people, let's face it, as hypnotherapists, I find this, I dare say you find this, with a lot of clients that come to us, they've tried many other methods first. They'll come to hypnotherapy as a last resort. They've tried traditional therapy, maybe even counseling or something. And they try hypnotherapy as a last resort, perhaps, I wouldn't say half-heartedly, but, thinking, oh, well, if nothing else has worked, I may as well try this.
Yeah, but it won't work anyway, which is, of course, the other stuff we end up doing in language with hypnosis. Yeah.
So it is good. I mean, I am all about giving detailed explanations when people come to me, first of all. I like to explain how the mind works, how the primitive mind works, how, when we're in that frame of mind or that state of mind, we can't think straight. We can't think logically because we're not in the logical brain. So it's good to give that explanation and people relate to it. There's to me, there's no point coming out with great big words and blinding people with science. You're just trying to make yourself look smart. People want something they can relate to, don't they?
Sure. So are you have one of these machines now, or are you getting one of those machines?
Oh, I'm getting one.
Is that because you're addicted to tech, or are you really planning on using it with clients?
Well, I am a bit techie anyway, but I would like to use it with clients, and I would like to use it on one of our podcasts. I'm not quite sure how we can do it yet, whether you're going to have to hypnotize me.
Whilst you're attached to a machine?
While I'm attached to a machine. Yeah, well, I can be attached to the machine and it can be plugged into my computer and we can be monitoring both.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
May I inquire as to whether this is a huge investment on your part, or is it an acceptable investment?
It's acceptable. It's no dearer than a brand new iPhone.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So it's doable.
Yeah, it's doable.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like you say, you can have a regular hypnosis session, or I could plug you into this machine and cost you more so I can get my money back. No, this is just for your continued education and see what's really going on.
I'm a bit geeky and techie as well. I think it could be reassuring to people to show them, at this point, this is when we're in this, thinking part of the brain. Because the thing is, we're only aware of our conscious thoughts. This was something that was brought up at the weekend. we're not aware of our subconscious thoughts until they pop up into our conscious.
And somebody makes you realize that they've happened.
Yeah.
But that's often, which is the role of the therapist, really.
Yeah. So I think it could be good to show people that, yes, your brain is thinking and working even when you think you're totally relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
That is when the brain is working, when it's
All
doing its
right.
thing. So I think it could prove useful. Certainly better than using a GSR meter just to show,
Mhm.
relaxation. You don't need to say to somebody, I can prove you were relaxed. Either they'll know they were relaxed or they weren't.
Yeah.
But to be able to show
Now,
somebody actually your mind was working really quickly on this part, even though you were relaxed.
Right. Now, do you remember though that when you first see a client, they're often very nervous. When you do your initial consultation, you do a quick relaxation hypnosis session, right?
Yeah, at the end.
Yeah.
Of it,
Yeah. So that they at least aren't quite so nervous by the time they get to the real first session. But do you think you're going to have people who are tech phobic or funny machines on my head?
Well, it won't be an obligatory thing. It's just something I'm going to offer people. Would you like to see what happens in your brain whilst you're in hypnosis?
I just wonder though, even if they might be willing and maybe curious, that it's putting another barrier, whether you might need to build an extra 10-minute buffer into your session.
Oh yeah. Well,
so that they can
putting
relax.
saline on the things that go in the head, the contacts. It takes time. You've got to do those just before you use them, and one thing and another. No, it will just be offered as an extra thing if people are interested to see what happens. Again, for people who want to try hypnosis but may, again, be doubtful, be dubious, and it's like, well, would you like to see what happens to your brain in hypnosis? Because most people ask, I don't know if you have this with your first time clients, what actually happens? What are you going to do? They think you're going to go.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of that. So how does this work?
Yeah, that's it. So it's to me, if I can offer that as an option, would you like to see?
First, you have an advantage over me because I work almost entirely online. So it's like mail this new iPhone to somebody.
Yeah,
have them do it themselves. But I would be very interested to know what you find.
Yeah, well, watch this space. Maybe we'll start series 4 off with.
You're expecting it will arrive in the next couple of months?
Oh yeah.
Good.
Yeah, it will.
What was that? Just a general CPD course you were on at the weekend?
It was specifically neuroscience.
Yeah, but it was part of your continuing education.
Development. Yeah. As I say, it was really quite heavy going. It even covered epigenetics and how our DNA can be altered by our surroundings and circumstances and situations, and that was pretty mind-blowing. I couldn't even attempt to repeat it. I'm still processing it.
Yeah, well, that's what they say. It says in the Bible, the sins of the fathers are visited upon the 7 generations. It does. Anything that happens to you is going to affect it's a knock-on effect. Yes, probably we consider it psychological, but there's quite a bit of evidence that things really do change you.
Yeah, well, this was what was covered, and that brought me into a recent thing I was looking into as part of my other work as a mental health first aid trainer, which was about racism and inherent.
Yeah, but actually that was what made me think of the DNA stuff, because I can't remember her name now. Somebody I actually know, and I can't remember her name. Joy, but I can't remember the last bit. She talks about traumatic instead of stress, it's slave.
Yeah,
people with Black Americans have that history, and that has gone down through. It's not just in the inherent trauma, and of course the perpetuated trauma, because the economic trauma and the racism and microaggressions and
yeah. Well, this is it. I mean, this is what we were talking about with systemic racism, institutionalized racism, and it's only when you particularly begin to study it. And I'm thinking of really, really simple stuff here. Okay, I'm not talking about people who want to eradicate all kinds of language, but you think of the word black and the negative connotations we use with it, a blacklist, the black sheep of the family. Okay.
Black magic. Sometimes that's good.
Oh, true, yeah.
Good chocolate.
True. But then you say if something's good, it's whiter than white.
Okay.
Yeah. Now you think, well, that can do it on a subconscious level to somebody. Yeah, it got me thinking. It's good to, think of other people's points of view, from, try and see the world through their window, as it were. And it got me thinking, and we covered inherent trauma on the course. That was really interesting stuff. And when you sit back and look at it, you think, yeah, I can see this. So,
that's good. Is there a follow-up course?
On the MHFA
on that subject?
Yeah, there's a lot more stuff coming out, because MHFA England have sort of launched themselves as an anti-racist organisation. They're going all out to help stamp out racism, which can only be a good thing.
Certainly would. Actually, I said when I first became a hypnotist, the problem is, of course, the client has to realize that they have the issue that they wish to, because these are all the subconscious thoughts that have been put into your brain over repetition, mostly.
Yeah.
Not necessarily intellectually believed by the person spouting them, but just that's the way stuff gets in. And if we could, if people could be persuaded that it might be good to have a little clean out of their own conscious biases.
Yeah, have you done that Harvard test? I can't remember what it's called now, the one on unconscious bias.
Which one? There are several.
I can't remember the name of it now, but there's one there's probably a few you can do online. There's one particular one you can do online. It was a friend of mine who's black who gave me the link to it, just to discover your own unconscious biases. And I wouldn't say it's scary. It's informative.
Yeah,
it's informative. As someone who thinks, for me, I think I'm quite aware of things. I try to be careful in the language I use, as I do with everybody. But it's amazing what unconscious biases we have, and we don't realize.
Yeah, actually, I liked that little story you were telling me. You should tell people that story too.
Which one was that?
The one about Goldilocks. Or you don't have to use Goldilocks, but you could use a story similar to that. All the things we assume about.
Yeah, that's
story.
Active listening. Yeah, don't make assumptions when you're listening to something. Yeah, I've got to be careful what I say, because they copyrighted that. But basically, I had to listen to a version of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and it sounded just like the traditional story. Goldilocks goes into the house, tries the different bowls of porridge. One of them's just right. She tries 3 different chairs, breaks one. And then she goes up to bed. She tries 2 of the beds. One was too hard.
Falls asleep.
Third one, she falls asleep. And then there were 15 questions afterwards, and they started off with question number 1. Goldilocks was a little girl, true or false? Well, we don't know, because nowhere in the story does it state Goldilocks is a little girl. She could have been a teenager. Yeah. Okay. And then it was things like Papa Bear's bed was too hard. Well, we don't know, because the story just said the first bed she tried was too hard. The second bed was too soft. We don't know whose bed it was. And it's things like that. We assume it was Papa Bear's bed that was too soft. Put my teeth in. Because maybe the original story we heard, it was Papa Bear's bed, but in that particular one we were listening to, it wasn't. But we assume it was. And this is the thing, they talk about active listening, which for us as therapists is incredibly important with all our clients, isn't it? That we don't make any assumptions on what they say, and that we do actually listen to everything and make sure that they know we've heard them, which of course we do by repeating back to them what they've just said to us. Yeah,
which always sounds a little odd. But...
I know, but just to get it reconfirmed and to let them know that we have heard what they're saying.
Yes.
Again, that
without judgment.
Yeah, absolutely, without judgment.
Yeah.
I'd be the last person to judge anybody. So yeah, neuroscience. I mean, what developments did you see as a doctor over the years?
Oh, no, tons. Yeah. Not a huge, because most of it is just the ability to look inside the brain. The MRI was amazing. Functional MRIs are phenomenal, which is that is where the David Spiegels of the world. That's there's slices through the brain, but but the functional is similar. You can see the areas light up when you're doing something. And so for the David Spiegels of the world, who can do real research because they've got all the gizmos and they've got masses of money behind them and some serious science chops. That stuff is pretty stunning. It used to be, you know, if you bumped your head, we just watched you and wouldn't let you go to sleep, which just seems very unfair. Nowadays, you can actually take a look and see, and you can, you know, reassure people.
I mean, I suppose how many years back would it be when somebody had a nasty bang to the head and then obviously had some kind of neurological problem that they'd just have to cut the scalp open and have a look?
Few years back now.
Other than an X-ray, of course.
But we did plain X-rays. That was a generation before me in medicine. CAT scans were definitely established by the time I was
Is that the same
around.
as a CT scan?
Yeah, CT and a CAT scan. And then the MRI came along while I was in training, and that really opened things up. And now there's PET scans. There's all sorts of radiological studies that we can do. So what else did you learn on this course?
All right, okay. Right, okay. We were talking about I'll come out with the big words, but it's the only time I'll do it. The motor cortex and the somatosensory cortex. Okay, which in my understanding of it, in my limited understanding of it, was to do with the sensations, for example, from the fingertips into the brain or the other extra sensitive parts of the body. Yeah,
any of which. Oh, you got to see a picture of the homunculus, did you?
Yeah, the homunculus. Yeah. Which I just found, as a man, I found it rather amusing. His hand was about 50 times the size of his genitals. I would have thought they were the sensitive bit. Obviously,
perhaps
not that much.
less used. Yeah. That actually does harken back. Did we talk about the pinprick sensation study that we were talking about recently?
No.
Okay.
Yeah,
because that's part of the same thing, right? You hypnotize somebody under hypnosis. You tell somebody their finger is much larger than it is, and they will have a better sense of
They can differentiate between two needles which are very close to each other. Whereas if you just ask them to tell you how many needles were there and you had two needles very close to each other, they'd only be able to detect one from either of the two needles. They couldn't differentiate and separate them out in the mind because they were too close. Whereas in hypnosis, making them imagine or getting them to imagine the finger's a lot bigger, they could actually differentiate between the two needles. So what's happening there then in hypnosis for them to be able to differentiate?
Don't know. Apparently the brain is easy to fool.
Well, we know that. All you have to do is watch a video of a roller coaster ride or a horror movie to know the brain can easily be fooled. You know, my favourite ones to watch are when somebody's doing a bungee jump off a high building.
Oh God,
I hang on to the arms of the chair because it's like, and yet
I leave the room. I don't want to know.
I must admit, I do like things like that.
Doing them or watching them?
Oh, watching them, of course.
Oh, okay.
You won't get me on heights. I get a nosebleed in a pair of thick socks. No. My climbing days are long over, I'm afraid. No, so as I say, it was just talking about the link between basically our sensitive areas and the brains. Of course, it went into all the scientific side of it. But again, of course, if you can send a signal from there to there, you can send one from there to there, can't you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
In fact, you are.
Yeah. All the time.
That's what happens. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but
what are you
terms? If you've got a signal there telling you "ouch" here, if you could control that signal there.
Well, we do that with pain control all the time. We tell our clients to turn those controls down so that they don't. Yeah.
Yeah. So, can you believe we're at the end of another episode?
Yes, because we yatter on together all the time.
Yeah.
If we really recorded every conversation we have, this would be massive. That's if we aired every recording.
We'd get sued.
So who do we have next week?
Oh, Sharon Waxkirsch.
Great.
Now,
and what would you remind me again? What did we talk about? Because we have recorded this already.
well, Sharon is very much evidence-based, isn't she? And she
is
works
indeed.
with doctors, surgeons, dentists, and does a lot of enabling these people to perform their various surgeries where their patients are just hypnotized, no anesthetic or some anesthetic. And of course, everything she's done is well documented, isn't it? And she actually trains doctors and dentists how to use hypnosis. And we also got on to hypnotizing dogs, but you'll have to listen right to the end of that episode to find out about that. I'm not giving anything away.
So say goodbye to us and see you again next week.
All right, see you again
Bye-bye.
next week.
We hope you've enjoyed listening. Please remember, this podcast is designed to give you an insight into therapeutic hypnosis and is for educational purposes only. So remember, consult with your own healthcare professional if you think something you've heard may apply to you or a loved one.
If you found this episode useful, you can apply for free continuing professional development or CME credits using the link provided in the show notes. Feel free to contact either of us through the links in the show notes. Join us again next week.